A little while back, I evaluated every MLB team's regular season with a grade, and you guys seem to enjoy that, so I thought I'd come back today with another video in the same vein, this one being giving every team who made the postseason a grade specifically for their exploits in the playoffs. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not going to consider what their expectations were entering October. It simply wouldn't be fair to evaluate a team like the Reds with the same scrutiny as the Yankees, as no one assumed one would be there, and the other one was considered a near shoo-in from Game 1. With that being said, let's hop right into it, going in order by which they were eliminated. First up, as such, we do have Cincinnati. There's certainly an argument to be made that this specific 83-win squad shouldn't receive a poor grade just because of the expectations clause, but I don't think that would be fair, and for one reason specifically. Their pitching was considered a major strength coming into their matchup with the Dodgers, and if they got swept, it was assumed it would be because their hitting wouldn't show up. But instead, they gave up 18 runs over 2 games. This and Tito Francona's abysmal use of his starters out of the pen means I'm going to have to give the Reds a failing grade of F. They basically accomplished nothing they set out to do, even if one of their major goals was just to give the Dodgers a run for their money. Next up, we have the Guardians. They pushed the Tigers to 3 games, and entering the 7th inning of Game 3, had been within 1 run or leading every single inning. But it was then an overtaxed bullpen fell apart a bit, giving up a chorus line of hits that ended up doing them in eventually. As well, they would cut their deficit to 6-3 on a 2-out error. Jose Ramirez would be thrown out trying to advance, killing their final chance at a rally. Expectations are key here as well. Pretty much nobody thought the Tigers were going to win this one based on how their final month of the season had gone, but the Guards simply weren't able to close this one out, even if their improbable regular season run to get there was something to behold. And, oh man, I gotta say, was Guards' ball hard to watch in the batter's box. D. The Padres were one of the biggest disappointments of the entire postseason to me. For a squad who managed to win around 90 games to come in and score 5 runs through 3 contests was just shocking. And it's not like they didn't have their chances, they just didn't capitalize at all, going a ridiculous 3 for 26 with runners in scoring position, with them getting just 2 hits combined from Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado in any circumstance at all. If those guys weren't doing anything, it was always going to be an uphill battle. Their pitching certainly was as advertised, with 35 strikeouts being posted, but unfortunately for San Diego, Mason Miller, who struck out all 8 batters he faced and the rest of the bullpen, couldn't score the team runs. This to me also has to get an F, as while they did manage to actually win a game, they weren't able to live up to, in any way, the playoff standards they've set for themselves over the previous 3 seasons. The Red Sox round out our portion of wildcard exits with hands down the best start of any of these teams, emerging victorious over the Yankees in Game 1. It looked like they had all of the momentum in their direction, but from here, just like with San Diego, their offensive approach seemed to fall off a cliff, scoring just 3 runs total in the next 2 games, including getting shut out in Game 3 by rookie Cam Schlittler, over 8 full innings. In those final 2 matchups, they were burned by sloppy play and an inability to come through with a big hit, not managing to hold a lead for even 1 batter. They only ended up giving up 9 runs in the 3 games, but when you only score a grand total of 6, that's just not a calculation that's going to go in your favor, leading to my grade of D-. The Yankees themselves now lead off our division series exiters, getting bounced in 4 total games at the hands of division rival Toronto. Even the fact that it went in extra contests I think obscures how dominant the Blue Jays were in this series, as they managed to outscore the Bronx Bombers 34-19, getting back-to-back double-digit offensive explosions in games 1 and 2, before finishing off the guys in pinstripes in Game 4 with a bend but don't break performance from their bullpen. Yes, New York did manage to beat Boston and watch as Aaron Judge registered one of the clutchest postseason hits of his entire career, but in a journey that I think everyone thought was going to take them a bit further, or at least play a bit more competitively, this was an abysmal overall performance, most notably in Game 4, when they left 10 runners on base while seeing Jazz Chisholm commit a back-breaking fielding error. For the pedigree they have, and their own expectations they've chosen to lay out year over year, I think I'm going to settle on a D. It could have been worse, but not by much. Oh, the Phillies. What a way to go out, getting down 2 games to none, then managing to rally back to crush the Dodgers 8-2 in their home ballpark, only to lose on a walk-off error, which was the first time a postseason series had ever ended like that. Just insanely brutal. But perhaps this does underscore a bit what their biggest problem was in their short run. A lack of offensive thump. If you took out Game 3 and that offensive explosion, they only managed to tally 7 runs in the other 3 games, with Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and Trey Turner essentially being silent across those 29 innings. For an aging squad that's seeing their window close a bit more year after year, this can only be designated as an abject failure. F. The Tigers had easily one of the most bizarre runs of 2025, managing to push 2 separate series to an elimination game, yet along the way, never feeling in any way dominant aside from when Tarek Skubal took the mound. Essentially, they largely carried with them their struggles of the last half of the season at the plate, yet pitched so well they found themselves just 1 game away from the championship series. And believe me, the hitting was downright brutal most of the time, setting a record for runners left on base versus the Guardians, then watching as 15 innings went by in the deciding Game 5 in the DS, with runs only coming on a single swing off the bat of Kerry Carpenter. With that being said, they did show a level of grit that's rarely seen in baseball, and considering the division lead that they had just blown, no one would have been surprised if they had just rolled over. It's for this reason, I'm going to give them a C+, the highest grade we've looked at so far. The Cubs took a different route to an identical result as Detroit, playing in 2 elimination games with the same record, but with theirs being set up by coming back from a 2-0 deficit to force a Game 5 versus Milwaukee. It was a tale of 2 teams in the DS for Chicago. Across games 1, 2, and 5, they scored 7 runs while giving up 19. But in games 3 and 4, reversed this to a ratio of 10-3. When they were on, and when they weren't, boy, was it a tough watch, especially to me in Game 5 when they couldn't manage to register more than 4 hits in a bullpen game. Even if the Brew Crew certainly did have a good bullpen, what separates them from the Tigers to me when trying to lay out a grade was the fact that they came into the DS with the 3rd best run differential of any team in baseball in the regular season, setting them up with a level of expectation that simply wasn't there for Detroit. It's for that reason I'm going to give them a marginally worse grade of C-. It was a good effort to bounce back along with the series win over the Padres, but in the end it wasn't nearly good enough. We lead off our final 4 teams with the aforementioned Brewers, who looked for a decent portion of the prior series like the Milwaukee we had gotten used to seeing in the regular season. A scrappy, slap-happy club that could beat you with home runs once in a while and a really deep pen, even if they lacked some of the starting pitching depth you'd like to see from a contender. But versus the Dodgers, they looked downright unrecognizable, setting multiple records for hitting ineptitude en route to scoring 4 runs in 4 games, not giving them a chance for the vast majority of innings played. You want to hear something crazy? Christian Yelich, Bryce Terang, Sal Frelick, and Andrew Vaughn managed to tally 3 hits cumulatively. And while their manager, Pat Murphy, couldn't seem to get his mind off of how much the Dodgers were spending relative to them, I don't think it ended up being their money that beat the Brewers, instead being a hitting approach that looked, by Game 4, to be more guessing than strategy. Between the impressive Cubs series and the ridiculously bad Dodgers one, I think I'll settle on a C. The Mariners are one of the more interesting teams we're going to evaluate because, on one hand, they won 6 playoff games, including quite a few that were gritty, hard-fought contests, putting up some of the best postseason performances in the process, the most iconic of which being their 15-inning walk-off to advance to the ALCS. But on the other hand, they blew a 2-0 lead versus the Jays, and then couldn't manage to close out either Game 6 or 7, despite having the lead late in the latter contest, having to watch as a hobbled George Springer took them yard and franchise icon Julio Rodriguez struck out on 3 pitches nowhere close to the zone, sealing one of the more painful losses you'll ever see in a postseason, one so agonizing in fact that it had J-Rod screaming in agony afterwards. I do think there was more good than bad overall, and it's important to remember that not every successful playoff push results in a World Series. With this in mind, I'm going to give them a B. The Toronto Blue Jays are the second to last team we're going to look at, fresh off their own heartbreaking defeat. Similar to the Mariners, you have to appreciate the journey they were able to go on, coming within 2 outs of winning their first World Series since 1993, while seeing Vladdy Jr. and Ernie Clement go on historic runs. These guys, plus the rest of their extremely deep lineup and some key pitching performances, allowed them to consistently look like the most complete team in baseball. With that being said, I have to deduct a pretty sizable amount based on the fact they weren't able to finish the job, choking away what felt like thousands of opportunities over those final 2 games, including on the very last play when Alejandro Kirk hit into a series-ending DP. A-. We now come to our final squad, the back-to-back World Series champion Dodgers. It's crazy to think that in August, many were questioning whether or not this was going to be a division-winning team, let alone one capable of making a deep playoff run. But in those final 2 months, they not only got hot, but got healthy, and started experimenting with using some of their high-priced starters in the bullpen, and that ended up being the catalyst that, I believe, not only saved their year, but allowed them to dominate like many thought they might coming into the season. Think about it. Entering the Toronto series, they had lost exactly 1 game while winning 9. And then versus the Blue Jays, they managed to register one of the greatest wins of all time in that 18-inning marathon, then pull off a comeback of biblical proportions in Game 7. This team, to me, not only proved what can happen when there's some actual investment in a roster, but also when guys fully buy into the idea that they're capable of winning every game, no matter how much the odds seem stacked against them. An A+ if I've ever seen one. Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching, have a great rest of your day.